Game number 78 as the Boston Celtics host the Cleveland Cavaliers. Welcome into the Celtics pregame report with Josue Pavone on CLNS Radio. I'm joined by Chris Fedor of the Cleveland Plain Dealer to preview this showdown between the top two teams in the Eastern Conference. Chris, thank you for checking in.
You got it, Josue.
So, Chris, what's Cleveland like right now? Is there a sense of panic throughout the fan base that the Cavs may not repeat and win a second title? What's the consensus in Cleveland?
I get the sense, Josue, that the consensus is that fans are willing to give this team the benefit of the doubt, despite how bad they were in March. They're thinking, hey, this is a team that came back from 3-1 down in the NBA Finals against the Warriors last year. This is a team that still has LeBron James leading the way. This is a team that still has three. This is a team that still has the highest payroll in the NBA, made some additions at the trade deadline and then at the buyout market so that they could fill the holes that they seemingly had. So while things look bleak right now and they have not played good basketball and they've had a bunch of team meetings recently, the sense I get is fans believe that there's another switch that can be flipped once the Cavs get to the postseason.
What's the latest on the LeBron James and Tristan Thompson thing? And do you feel like this year's locker room has been much different compared to last year's?
Yeah, I do think it has been different. I haven't been able to pinpoint exactly why that is. It's just a different feeling around this team. And I was talking to some of the veterans about that the other night. And I think the pressure of repeating as champions is certainly getting to a lot of these guys. And the fact that these other teams around the NBA spent the entire offseason and then the trade deadline making moves to try and beat the Cavs is something that can be very, very difficult when trying to repeat. So I do think it is a very different locker room. It was a different locker room the other night, even though it was a big win. They beat Indiana. It was a hard-fought win. It was the kind of grinded-out win, coming up with clutch plays down the stretch that you would think would lead to a lot of happiness. IRVING was gone by the time the media went in the locker room. J.R. Smith was gone by the time that happened. Shumpert was gone by the time that happened. So there's clearly some friction within the locker room. As for LeBron and Tristan Thompson, I don't think it's anything that's going to last, Josue. It was something that happened in the moment. I think it was something that has been building all season long, because that's what LeBron does. A lot of times he gets really demonstrative on the court with his teammates. And Tristan's the kind of guy that's going to go right back. And it boiled over because of the coverages and because of the timing and because of the frustration from March and all that kind of stuff. But they had yesterday off. They didn't shoot around this morning. So I think there's enough time for that sort of thing to die down by the time they play against the Orlando Magic on Tuesday. And then, of course, I think those kinds of moments have a tendency, or could, if used right, they could galvanize a team. They could end up being a turning point. So we'll see how they progress from there.
Have you ever seen that before? That type of atmosphere in the locker room after a win?
Yeah, actually. I saw it last year a few different times, and that's one of the reasons why, Josue, that the Cavs felt like David Blatt was the wrong coach, because it wasn't the locker room of the number one seed in the Eastern Conference at times last year. It didn't seem like they were enjoying wins. It didn't seem like they were enjoying playing with each other. It didn't seem like there was a trust within the locker room and a trust of the leader of the team, and that was David Blatt. So that's something that David Griffin, the GM of the team, pointed to when he made the decision to go from David Blatt to Ty Lue. He said there's a lack of connectedness. I've been in the locker room. I know what it's supposed to be like, and I'm just not getting that feeling. Let's see if we can make some kind of change so that we can find a way to get to a locker room that it's supposed to be when you're first place in the Eastern Conference. So, yeah, there were times last year that the locker room was sort of like that, but it wasn't this deep into the season with the playoffs right around the corner.
So with Ty Lue now in charge, do you feel like it's sort of his responsibility to make sure this team is gelling and connecting before the playoffs, or is that something that the team needs to just figure out on their own?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question, Josue, and I think Ty kind of addressed that the other night. So after losing against the San Antonio Spurs, James Jones, the veteran, a guy who's really well respected. He's got a voice that matters in that locker room. He delivered a speech to the team after losing by a bunch against San Antonio, basically saying, hey, look, March is really, really important. There are a lot of things that we can get done here at the end of the season. It's go time. We've got to get right. We've got to figure this out. We can't be wasting these games. And then they lose against Chicago on Thursday, and then there's another players-only meeting. LeBron James talks before Ty Lue. That was weird. Very, very weird. It was just a different vibe. But Kyrie Irving said after losing to Chicago, he felt like everything that happened in the locker room before the media got in there was going to allow them to take a step forward. So Ty said the other night that this team has done enough talking and they've done enough meeting, and now they just have to fix their issues on the court. So I don't know if that's a Ty Lue thing. I don't know if that's a player thing. But the only way for the Cavs to get through this rut that they're currently in, the only way for them to get right before the postseason is not by conversations, it's not by team meetings, it's not by schemes. It's about coming together as a team and getting this figured out on the court. And, you know, a win against Indiana should have been that. But because of how close to the bottom they were in March, it's going to take a lot more than just a win against Philadelphia, a win in double overtime against Indiana. It's going to have to build towards something.
CLNS Radio's Celtics pregame report is being powered by the SeatGeek ticketing app, the smartest and easiest way to buy and sell sports and concert tickets. Get a $20 rebate on your first purchase by downloading the free SeatGeek app to your phone. Go to the settings tab and click add a promo code and enter the code CELTSNEWS. That's CELTSNEWS, all one word, for a $20 rebate. And so SeatGeek knows who sent you. All right, Chris, what do the Cavs need to do to beat the Celtics tonight? And how surprised are you to see the Celtics grab the #1 seed in the East?
I'm a little bit surprised, Josue, because I think coming into the year, there was this feeling that, okay, after what happened in last year's playoffs, it was going to be Cavs, Toronto battling for that #1 seed again. And because during
Hey, Chris, we're surprised too, Chris. We're surprised too.
Are you really?
Yeah. I mean, going into the regular season, there was a lot of talk that maybe they can grab the 2 seed, but we sort of saw, the Toronto Raptors as the team that's going to win the division, and if the Celtics can be the 3rd seed, then that's fine. So to see them in the 1st, we're really surprised to see them do what they've been doing the last couple of months, especially.
So how has it happened then? I mean, I know Isaiah Thomas has been in the MVP conversation and he's played really, really well, but how does the team go from first round exit in the playoffs, not making a bunch of moves to change the roster with the addition of just Al Horford, really, to going to the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference?
I think it's the starting lineup, Chris. I mean, a lot of the time, the first couple of months of the season, the starting 5 unit, it was very rare that they all played together. And by the time they hit March, they were just in the stretch where it was perfect. Avery Bradley came back. Jay Crowder was back for good. Everyone was healthy. And, as the starting 5, they've only played about I think they're up to about 38 games together this entire season. So I feel like that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting game. And it's the second game of a back-to-back for the Cavs. And it's the 3rd game in 4 days. And nobody's going to make excuses at this time of the year. It is what it is. LeBron James played 52 minutes in the first game of that 3 and 4 because the Cavs went into double overtime against Indiana. So how they manage that game or how they decide what they're going to do with their players in that game against Boston, I think is going to be very, very interesting. But what the Cavs have to do is, look, they got to defend, Josue. That's been a thing that has been a problem since the beginning of the season. And the Cavs said at the beginning of the season, okay, well, we're going to get that right. We're going to figure things out. We're going to have a fully healthy roster. And it's been the same thing over and over and over again. At some point, I think it's fair to wonder if the Cavs actually have the components to be a good to great defense, since they haven't shown evidence of that. And the Cavs are in a dangerous spot, I think, because there is such thing, I guess, as playing with more intensity in the postseason and then locking into one opponent and then playing your best when you're playing against the best teams and the most important teams. But there's also something to be said about building habits and being able to draw back on those kinds of things. At some point, you just become who you are throughout the course of the regular season. And this late into the season, the Cavs are still a team that is searching for answers to try and get their defensive identity back. And they're still a team that's searching for answers of what is their best lineup, what is their best set. So it's going to be really, really interesting against Boston to see how the Cavs come out with that. Because they have said all along that they're going to prioritize rest, health, and being fresh going into the postseason over seeding, over anything else. So how they approach that game Wednesday, I think, is something that's going to be really, really fascinating.
How important do you think the 1 seed is?
I don't think it's very important for them at all. And Ty Lue has even said, Joe Sway, that going back to last year, their playoff run, they won the first series against the Pistons on the road, and they won the second series on the road. And then they capped the Toronto series in the Eastern Conference Finals on the road. They came back from a 3-1 deficit and won 2 games on the road to beat the Golden State Warriors. So much of what they've been saying is about what they did last year, which I think is a dangerous game to play, but it also gives them confidence that if they have to start a series on the road, or they have to play a Game 7 if it gets to that point on the road, they're confident that they can do that. So the number 1 seed, to me, doesn't matter as much to the Cavs as finding their identity again and playing great basketball, if that's even possible for them, before the playoffs start. And if that results in the number 1 seed, then so be it. But it's just more important to be playing the right way going into the postseason, however that comes about.
What's your prediction, Chris? Who wins tonight?
I think Boston's going to win tonight because, again, like I said, it's the 3rd game in 4 nights. The Cavs, this stretch that they're currently in, did not start the best way for them with their guys playing an abundance of minutes against Indiana. And it's being the 2nd night of a back-to-back on the road. The Cavs are 0-9 on the 2nd game of a back-to-back. And then you throw in the fact that it's in Boston. Boston's had a bunch of days off to get ready for this kind of thing. I think it's one of those games that you could look at as a schedule loss, and I think Boston's just playing better basketball than the Cavs right now. So I think Boston gets it.
All right, well, he is Chris Fedor of the Cleveland Plain Dealer. You can follow him on Twitter at Chris Fedor. You can read all of his work on cleveland.com. Chris, this was great, man. This was fun. Thank you for joining me.
You got it just away anytime, buddy.
Well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Celtics pregame report. I want to thank Chris once again for joining me and everyone who tuned in to yet another pregame report. Be sure to check out the Garden Report after the game on CLNS Radio's YouTube channel at youtube.com/CLNS Radio. Check out all the raw and uncut videos from the locker room and press table. Make sure you check out the Garden Report. Tonight's postgame show will air immediately following tonight's game on CLNSradio.com. Call in toll free at 347-215-7771 after the game to get on the airways. Or just like this show, you can listen to it on demand anytime, any place, anywhere on the CLNS Radio mobile app. We'll see everyone back here tomorrow as the Celtics are at Atlanta to take on the Hawks. Weekday shows air on the Celtics newsfeed channel on iTunes, Stitcher, and the CLNS Radio mobile app. For today's Boston Celtics pregame report with Josue Pavone, this is Josue Pavone signing off.